first start off by saying good morning. Thanks so much for being here. I wanted to start off the beginning with something that is actually off of the agenda, but did want to continue to encourage folks to come out and vote. We have our early voting centers, which are open from 10 o'clock until 8 p.m. Through this Thursday. And so I would encourage people to take advantage of that great opportunity to cast your vote early. I have done so, as I know many of the council members have and many in the community. Although I will say that Montgomery County, based on the most recent numbers that I had, tends to lag some of the other areas in the state. And so I want to make sure that my folks hear loud and clear that there are many polling places. You can go to 777vote.org to find out where those early voting sites are. But again, it provides a great opportunity to avoid the long lines, and we would encourage everyone to come out and cast their vote. This is a very important time for Montgomery County when it comes to many of the things that we continue to hold as priorities, whether it's transportation or school construction funding, funding for a lot of various social programs that we see here in Montgomery County are a priority of ours. So from that perspective, we want to make sure that our residents have their voices heard. I did want to jump into a number of bills that are before us, either that have been introduced or about to go into committees. I want to start off with one of ours that deals with our procurement process. Many of you know we've had this conversation before about the challenges that we're facing regarding some of our minority businesses and the disparity study that came out, and just had a conversation with our county executive over the weekend, who remains supportive of the concept of altering our procurement pieces. What I did want to do is make sure that folks understand that I'm very flexible in working with our county attorneys to make sure that we don't run afoul of the law and what we can do and what we're entitled to do based on our disparity study. But look forward to continuing to push both pieces, both the priority piece dealing with our minority, female, and disabled-owned businesses, as well as the piece that also deals with a priority for Montgomery County businesses. I think both of those are extremely important, and I continue to have support of a number of my colleagues, including who I'd just like to welcome, Council Vice President Leventhal, who's here today watching on, who also has another bill that I'll be talking about shortly. But did just want to briefly thank the co-sponsors as well as everyone who continues to make this a priority. I know that Councilmember Nancy Navarro has a couple of task forces, and we're already hearing a lot of comments through the community that are saying that they want to be a part of this task force, that they have a lot of information to share, as well as anecdotal experience, and I think all that will be welcome when it comes to how we continue to move forward beyond just these two bills and continue to make our process more fair and equitable amongst all of our business owners throughout Montgomery County. I did want to talk a little bit about a bill that Councilmember Leventhal has put forward, our senior property tax credit, which I think for our lower income seniors, which I think will be tremendous. I've signed on as a bill sponsor, and many of our colleagues have as well. We understand as we have a senior population that continues to grow, we need to make sure that they're still able to afford to live here in Montgomery County. And so we certainly don't want to price them out of their homes that they've lived in for all of their lives, understanding that now that they may be retired and drawing retirement income, that some of them might not get that same sort of revenue that they had, and being able to pay their property tax bills and pay all of the other things as we have a rising cost of health care. I heard it from my mother over the weekend as she complained about the challenges associated with what Medicare and Medicaid pays for and all these kinds of things, and prescriptions, and continuing with the bills that you have. And we really want to make sure that we allow our seniors to age in place. We want to make sure that they're communities that are welcoming, that they're villages that embrace our seniors. And so as a part of our senior agenda that we had 2 years ago under the leadership of Councilmember Berliner at the time, who was our president, we certainly want to continue to push this issue forward, whether it's issues of transportation or issues of affordability. All of those are going to be priorities for this council. And so thank Councilmember Leventhal, or Council Vice President Leventhal, for his leadership. I also, last but not least, wanted to talk a little bit about something that I feel is extremely important to us as well, which is talking about what our next steps are for how we move the council forward. We'll shortly be in this fall electing leadership that will kind of guide us through the process, and I think that's one of the reasons why Councilmember Leventhal is here. We want to continue the great relationship that we've been able to foster with all of you, that have fostered with our community in terms of informing people about the great work that's being done here in the County Council. Ms. Alexander has done a great job of reporting that I had some choice words for our media when it came to voter engagement, and I think that I have to be quite frank, this year has been a welcome change in terms of folks reporting on some of the great things, not just the bad stories, but the great things that are happening here in Montgomery County. The preparation that Montgomery County takes, whether it was with the Ebola outbreak and the challenges associated with that, whether it's the great work that's being done, whether it's procurement or with education, and securing funding and working with our state. There are a lot of great things that we continue to do. Our master plans and seeing the great work that's being done there to continue to expand areas of our county that haven't been able to glean the economic development and job opportunities that are so important to all of our residents. All of these things are so important that folks need to know that we're working on, to understand that we're engaged, that we're responsive, and that we're continuing to make sure that we provide all the opportunities for all of our residents. And so I wanted to say, as we wind down with my presidency, thank you for being here, for reporting on those stories that are extremely important to our residents, that help them to be engaged in our process and to understand what exactly it is that we do. And so with that, I did want to close by saying, since I did mention it, that I told you so. Having a patient at NIH was certainly the right choice for us. We were very happy to see what happened with Ms. Pham, and while NIH doesn't want to claim all the credit for the great work that was done, I think that again we were very passionate about the fact that we felt NIH was a facility that was properly prepared to be able to take care of a patient who had an infectious disease like Ebola, and to be able to not only protect the public, but to help the patient as well. And I think that they did just that, and I'm very proud to have an institution like NIH within our midst, and all of the federal institutions, but more importantly, one who's on the forefront of battling many of our very highly deadly diseases like Ebola. And so it's a proud moment for Montgomery County on so many levels, but just wanted to close with that, and I'll turn it over to you guys for questions.
I have to follow up on the "I told you so." And when you say that again, you're talking about during your discussion on the council, the need for one centralized, best-equipped place.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I think that NIH, again, one of only a few facilities in the nation that has the biocontainment unit that would be able to serve the patient, but at the same time also make sure that the public was protected and there was no concerns about breaches of protocol and procedures, because this is something that they did day in and day out in working with a myriad of infectious diseases. So that's the best place. And so, my encouragement would continue to be that as we place people who might come down with this infectious disease at a facility just like NIH that has that not only facility, but also has the processes and procedures in place that they go through day in and day out to alleviate any of the mistakes. Because quite frankly, it's unfortunately the mistakes that can end up with the challenges that we saw with what happened down in Dallas, Texas. And so from that perspective, I think that's the right thing for us to do, and really in the best interest of the public as a whole.
Can I follow up? Because you just said something that Governor Cuomo this morning said, if I'm overcautious, I'll take that criticism of his policy in New York. Governor O'Malley just announced the state policy where everyone coming in from Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia would be tracked once they're here in Maryland. First off, do you think the mandatory quarantining of people that Cuomo took, that tack, is the right way to go?
The mandatory quarantine, I think, is a bit much and kind of goes across the line when it comes to personal rights of that individual. I think that, again, we want to certainly err on the side of caution. So there's certainly some interaction that needs to happen with folks that we know are coming from high-risk areas. But I don't think that quarantine, rising to that level, is where we need to go. I think that, again, what we've been able to do to this point has been very effective in terms of understanding and highlighting people that are at risk and making sure that we're tracking them. And if they do have some sort of symptoms, putting them in a facility that will be able to not only take care of their needs, but also protect the greater public. And so that's where I think that the line with where we are here in Maryland has kind of been drawn, and I think that's the appropriate steps for us.
And so I don't know if you've had a chance to look at what the governor put out this morning, but are you equally as confident in his approach as you are in the care that people get at NIH?
I haven't seen the exact, but I know that in our prior conversations, so I'm not sure if anything's changed since then, but in just maintaining that contact and being watchful, but not going to the steps of quarantine is the right direction to go. So.
Craig, county executive wrote a letter about the WSSC fee proposal and him not being ready to support that increase. Where do you stand?
Well, I'm not sure. You know, myself as an individual versus as council president speaking on behalf of the council, you know, we certainly have struggled with WSSC infrastructure for a very long time. We've seen what happens when that investment isn't there. And the impact that it has on our residents. And so I think that there's a fine line. There certainly is one in which we don't want to make sure, or we want to make sure that we're not overburdening our residents, but at the same time, we need to make sure that our infrastructure is viable for many years to come. And the cost of that impact, when you shut down an area like Connecticut Avenue to repair a water main break that lasted for a little over a week, I think it was, is a huge cost for us. And so, from that perspective, understanding that we have aging infrastructure throughout the county that needs to be fixed and updated, I think that that bears us really looking at the investments that we want to make, and certainly moving those investments forward, because I think that in the long run, we'll end up paying the ultimate cost at some point anyway. Even if we don't move this infrastructure forward, we're going to have to eventually have those added into the operating costs. So whether we do it on the front end or do it on the back end, at some point we're going to have to pay for changing around that infrastructure.
When you say we, you mean the taxpayers, the ratepayers?
Absolutely. I mean, every time that we have a water main break, not only does it cost the county, but it also costs WSSC to go in and fix it. And so at that point, they're still going to fix it, and they're still going to have to recoup those costs. You know, these repairs aren't free. And so from that perspective, they're still going to end up paying it as part of their rate somehow. I think that if we're on the front end, we at least save some of the costs that come from the emergency repairs, an emergency response, and the loss of time for myriads of people, businesses that are impacted. There's so many other ancillary effects that go along with any of those failures. And so from that perspective, we certainly want to make sure we're trying to invest in our infrastructure as much as possible.
Are you touring Lakelands Park on Wednesday? I was told some county officials are touring the new soccer field.
I'm trying to work out my schedule. Unfortunately, the big challenge is that we still have early voting going on at the same time. So we're balancing our responsibilities for the county versus also making sure that we're engaging with our voters and getting them out to vote. So I'm trying to work out my schedule so that I can attend that and take a look at the turf field, but I'm not sure at this point if I'm going to be able to make it.
Interest in the field, why you're interested, and what you want to know?
Well, I think that overall, you know, when we look at the efficacy of turf and how we want to move forward as a county, there's certainly some decisions that are before us. You know, we have one that'll be coming before the Education Committee at some point. And so we really want to understand between different vendors what kinds of options we have before us and how best to move forward from an environmentally sound perspective, but also from an efficacy perspective in terms of making sure that those fields are able to be utilized for the maximum amount of time for our kids. And so there's a balance that's there, and so we certainly want to understand best practices. We want to understand how our fields are performing for us, and how that will help us shape the future when it comes to looking at how we grow our fields, our field inventory in Montgomery County.
Question on the ban the box legislation, that gets a vote tomorrow?
That's right.
Can you explain how that will work, and whether business owners might say, look, if you don't let me read that out right away, let's say I have some kind of clearance that I have to make sure no particular person with a particular record gets a job, are you forcing me to waste time and money, as harsh as that sounds, on someone who may not be hireable? And I just made up that word.
No, that's...
But, I mean, what kind of pushback are you getting from employers? What kind of concerns do you get? And does it apply to things like child care workers, teachers, et cetera?
Well, so we have exemptions that are, let me actually start with the exemptions first, because we have exemptions written into the bill that actually allow for particular fields, like teachers, folks that are working with children, that part, that they're exempt. And so from that perspective, those procedures will still go on. What is happening is, however, we have amended the bill to alleviate those concerns that we heard from businesses when it came to, well, why make me go through this process and then end up offering a job to someone who then really wouldn't be a person who I'd want to have as my employee. And we understood that. What we wanted to do all along with this ban the box bill was allow people to have an opportunity to explain. To get them past the point of a box on an application that was checked and that application then tossed aside, and that person not given an opportunity to be able to interview for that job. That's now changed. And so with this bill, the way it's amended, it actually gives the ability for them to talk through that process in the interview. So they've gotten past the application, and then at the interview can explain whether or not they've had something like that, because the employer is allowed to ask that question. And so much as many of those things would come up as it would if a person took a break off from their employment and decided to tour abroad for 5 years, an employer is always going to ask, what happened during that time frame? Can you let me know about that? And so that's what we heard from businesses as well. It was probably going to come up during that interview process. And so we felt that was the best time with which to be able to do that. And often we heard from folks, including Clarksburg Jail, that they were telling inmates that were being released and going out to look for jobs to self-disclose during that interview phase. And so that was the appropriate time. We felt, businesses felt it was appropriate as well. They wouldn't be wasting time with bringing in, because normally they're bringing in more than one applicant to go through the interview process. So there's not time lost, but also a chance to possibly get an employee who they might be able to look past whatever that infraction might be and realize that this person is an employee that they really want to have as a part of their business. And so I think we've served the best of both worlds at this point with this amended bill. And so I'm looking forward to its passage tomorrow. I think it's going to be a great step forward for Montgomery County. And quite frankly, Prince George's has now signed on saying that they're going to do a ban the box bill. They looked at our bill for guidance. I talked with Obie Patterson, who's one of the lead sponsors of the bill, and we had a great conversation to let them know about some of the changes that we had made as well. So I think this will be an instrument that many surrounding jurisdictions will be able to utilize as well, that'll continue to move us forward. We're really focusing on businesses and jobs and allowing people to get back to work, to give them that opportunity. It's the same message that I talked about before, and this is just another step in that direction.
Do we know how many people would come under that category? How many people are literally turned away just because they may have either a misdemeanor or even a felony in their background?
I'm not sure. I don't know if we even have those numbers. I'm not sure if something like that is tracked. But I can just imagine. I mean, if you think back, way back in history, I mean, it doesn't have to be anything that was, happened a year ago. I mean, this could be something that someone is 50 and this happened when they were 21. Mm-hmm. And so from that perspective, I mean, I think that there's probably a large group of folks that are in that arena. And so I think that it's something, again, and a lot of these people are probably already employed and gainfully employed and doing very well that might have this kind of a background. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to be a good employee. And so I think that some employers have already seen that. Some businesses have already seen that and are looking forward to giving more opportunities for folks, really understanding that they're employing the person and not an application or a record.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much. Thanks again for another great press conference. I think there's one more. One more.
We'll let you know
Yeah.
at the end of the week. Probably.
So thank you very much. All right. Take care.